This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
I finished these fights.
Give me a hell yeah!
Top Rope Nation.
Learn to love it. It's the best thing going today.
What's up, wrestling fans? It's Wednesday night, episode 125 of Top Rope Nation. My name's Ryan Drosty of comicbook.com. We're back here live on YouTube for the second week in a row, streaming the show live here. I'm here with Kyle and Justin. We're going to break down everything going on in the world of pro wrestling this week. We got some big thoughts on AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling coming out of Wrestle Kingdom this past weekend. We got some great in the news items, I think, to discuss, and we're going to be giving away a free t-shirt for you. So before we get to all that, let me just see how the week's going over there for Kyle Ross in Cleveland, Ohio. Kyle, you got a drink poured I can hear tonight. How is your night? How's your week going?
Oof, it was going okay until Brandy Rhodes graced us with her presence. Yowza.
Quite the discussion in our text thread tonight about that. We're going to be hitting all those topics. Justin Joint, across town from me here in the great state of Iowa, the wrestling capital of the United States. Justin Joint, what's going on?
I am reeling. I'm just reeling. I don't know what to do with myself. So I'm excited to talk to you guys and figure out this whole, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle leaving the royal family thing.
Distressing news this afternoon out of the UK. I'm sure a friend of the show, Liam O'Rourke, is beside himself with what's going on over there.
You know, isn't that the girl from Suits?
I think so. I never watched
Yes, it is.
I have no idea. I mean, I know she's an actress, yeah.
Yes. A show where everything happened in two rooms. I felt like every commercial was just like, there was they had that boardroom, or there was a different room, or the one person's office.
Was that ever on after Raw?
It must have been on after something, because that's when I would see the commercials.
Okay. You are thinking of Silk Stockings.
Oh,
that was a good show.
Yeah, that was a much more interesting show.
I would Silk Stockings with all my heart and soul.
Back in the good old mid-'90s, yes.
Rob Estes was an absolute frickin' beaut and a half.
Guys, if you're joining us here on YouTube tonight, you're enjoying the new live stream that we've been doing, and we're going to continue doing this each and every week. Throw us a subscribe if you're already not a subscriber. We would greatly appreciate it. Give us the thumbs up on the video. If you're listening to the podcast feed after the fact on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TopRopeNation.com, wherever podcasts are found, leave us that 5-star review. Hit subscribe there as well. It helps us out a lot. You can send the show an email at topropenation@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're here live with us on YouTube, of course, just like last week, we've got the chat room going here. The chat room is embedded in the video stream that you are watching here on the page, on your computers, on your phone, wherever you're at. So go ahead and let us know you're here. Let us know your thoughts on the topics that we are discussing tonight. If you want to support the show, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can head on over to patreon.com/topropenation. Become a supporter of the show. You get bonus content, exclusive audio. You get a free gift for joining. You get shout-outs on the air. Patreon.com/topropenation. And an even easier way to support the show, if you're with us tonight here in the live stream, is to head on down to the video description, and you will see a link to our Streamlabs page where you can leave us a tip for this broadcast. You can tip us $1. You can tip us a couple bucks, whatever you want to do. Think of it as buying all of us a beer if you want to, because damn it, we love beer. We love good craft beer. The tips will go back into supporting the show, and if you do so, a very special animation will pop up here on the video feed, just like if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get a shout out on the show live. There will be an animation that pops up on the video stream as well. So guys, with all of that said, I think we got the plugs in. We've touched base on how our weeks are going. I didn't even talk about myself. It's been kind of a whirlwind. I was covering NXT for comicbook.com live tonight, so I've been running around the Top Rope Nation headquarters with my head cut off. It's been nuts here tonight. I got home from work, wrote NXT, got the podcast ready, got the stream ready. So if I sound a little off tonight, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to power through, though, guys. I've got a good beer here. I got an Exile Brewing IPA with me to get through the broadcast. We got a lot of hot topics to hit. And with that being said, I think it's time to go to In the News.
All the latest wrestling news. Get behind the scenes insider info. At 1-900-909-9900. Calls cost the $1.49 per minute. Kids, get your parents' permission. But call right now.
All right, so the Wednesday Night Wars, of course, continued this week. Last week, it was a little bit different because NXT aired a kind of a best-of show, and AEW won the night in the ratings. They had their first broadcast of the year down in Jacksonville, Florida, their official headquarters, I guess you could say. This week, we were head-to-head again, and just right off the bat, let's start off with AEW because they're going to be kind of connected to what we're talking about this week in a major way. Kyle, what did you think? You kind of hinted at it in the intro. What did you think of AEW tonight?
If it wasn't the weakest episode of Dynamite, it's on the short list. I think the first hour in particular was probably the worst hour of television they've done, with back-to-back segments involving Brandy Rhodes, the Nightmare Collective, and then the Dark Order. Brandy Rhodes, I don't know what to say. This was one of the single worst performances I've seen by someone on a national wrestling television show in a long time. She came out for commentary, for those who didn't see it, for the AEW women's title match, immediately buried the match. And I know she's trying to get over as a heel, but it's someone who doesn't really know the right way to do it. No offense to her. I'm just going to say that. She's like, why am I even out here watching this match? This is boring. And then, she was, mentioning, oh, Britt Baker, looks like she'd rather be doing anything but watch this match. Oh, she's really dumb. I don't even think she's really a dentist. And it was just, it was grating. It was worse than most Stephanie McMahon. And for a company that claims to be an alternative to WWE, I know Stephanie McMahon is not generally on television anymore in WWE, but you can't have that, because it really was reminiscent of the worst of Stephanie, early 2000s. And then it totally just ate the match alive, totally killed the segment dead. And then you follow that up with the Dark Order. Not good. So it was hard to get back into the show. I thought the closing segment with Moxley and Jericho, simple but effective. But yeah, overall, I thought probably the worst Dynamite to date.
That's disappointing, because I haven't watched Dynamite yet because I was covering NXT, but I did think last week's show was really good. I thought they...
It was.
Last week they turned it around. I've thought that Dynamite hasn't been too exciting lately, to put it bluntly. But I thought it kind of turned a corner last week, so that is really disappointing to hear. Justin, what were you tuned into for the most part tonight?
I missed a lot of it due to life stuff. So really, I just kind of caught the back half of the shows. And I suppose I was a little bit more on AEW, probably because I felt like they might be building some momentum, and I was very curious about what they're going to do with this whole Moxley thing, which I thought for a moment there, I was like, wow, are they actually going to do something unexpected and interesting? And they didn't. I figured even if he was joining Inner Circle, it would be for a week. but they didn't even let it breathe that long. They killed it right away.
See, I disagree with that. I thought that was like, a couple weeks ago on this show, we brought up the idea of simplicity. And yeah, it was simple and predictable, but it was the absolute right move to do. I think the 5-minute curveball was what it was, but it was Austin in the suit. That's what it was intended to be. If anything, I think it went on too long. Actually, the curveball.
And see, that's the thing. You say Austin in a suit, but I don't recall Austin ever getting booed. Where the crowd really started shitting on Moxley, which that's where I was starting to think, oh wait, we might have something here. Let this go for a while, or let it run.
See, I'm looking at it the opposite way. Like, to me, everybody knew, and you alluded to, you knew what the end point was, that Moxley was not long-term going to be in the Inner Circle. So I think by letting it go, and like the only mistake in this segment was letting people believe that he might not, and like the crowd kind of turning in the segment. What you want is the heels to be fooled, but the crowd to kind of be in on the ruse. And I thought that was maybe the only failure of the segment, because clearly, like you said, everybody knows what you're building towards. And I think you want to make that clear and not confusing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what threw me off, because I really, there for a minute, with it dragging on, is like, they might have something here with, teaming up kind of the former big WWE guys in this new promotion. But obviously that's not what they wanted to do.
Yeah. It was funny because when I was watching, I was like, God, I hope they don't drag this out. I kind of hope they don't have him be in this group, because that's not what this segment really should have been. Like, I actually thought they would have. They tried so hard to swerve the crowd. I feel they lost the crowd slightly. But overall, I thought that segment was actually the best thing on the show. And something else that needs to be said about AEW, they were building to this whole thing with the Moxley and the offer of joining the Inner Circle, right? Well, earlier in the show with Brandy and then the Dark Order, they do these two, offering people to join the group deals. And they were, really horrible. Dark Order offered Christopher Daniels, who refused. And it kind of undercuts your main event angle when you're doing not one, but two shittier versions of the same angle in the mid card. So I thought that was a mistake, whoever laid out the show. That was a major problem with tonight's Dynamite.
What was the match of the night, in your opinion? Like, if the listeners want to tune in to Dynamite, if there's a must-watch match, what would you say that would be?
A must-watch match?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of a tough call. I don't really think there was a must-watch match.
What was the most entertaining match for you?
I don't know. I guess by traditional metrics, people would say the opener with Omega and Page against Private Party. But I don't know how effective it was overall. I guess that. But yeah, I don't think... honestly, other than the main event segment, I thought the show was completely skippable.
I missed it. Was the Rhodes and Lucha Bros match not very good?
It was okay.
Okay.
It was just it's not something I would, with as much wrestling as there's out there, it's not something I would go out of my way to watch.
Did you guys flip over to NXT much at all, or were you pretty much exclusively?
No, I had two screens going. I watched both of them.
Okay. Yeah, I thought NXT, it's a little difficult when you're covering the show live to really take it in. Sometimes I have to go back and rewatch some stuff, because I'm writing out articles kind of summarizing what's happening, and I like to just be able to sit there and enjoy my wrestling and take it in. It makes it a little more difficult, but from what I saw, it was a pretty solid show. You had that Fatal 4-Way main event to determine the North American title number one contender. The show started good. You had Rhea Ripley coming out. It's her first appearance since winning the NXT Women's Championship, their final show of 2019. She comes out and almost instantly is interrupted by Toni Storm, so a surprise appearance there. And I'm a little confused with what's going on there. By the time some of the listeners tune in, maybe they will have kind of explained this a little bit better, but Toni Storm challenged Rhea Ripley to a match at When Worlds Collide later this month, and Ripley accepted. And Toni is wrestling for the NXT UK Women's Championship in a triple threat this weekend, so she pulled the whole I'm going to be a double champion and beat you. Well, then the whole segment broke down. They got interrupted by Kaylee Ray. They got interrupted by Bianca Belair. So the NXT Women's Champion was actually there. Io Shirai came out. Candice LeRae came out. Turned into a 6-woman match. And then later, NXT announced that they're going to have a battle royal next week to actually determine who is going to challenge Rhea Ripley first. And the release they put out, unless it was a typo, did not have Toni Storm's name on it. So I'm not sure if they meant the first challenger after Toni Storm, or if Toni Storm's not even in the mix, which wouldn't really make sense since she was, the primary person in this segment, and Ripley accepted her challenge. Not quite sure. I mean, it very well could have been a typo on the WWE.com article, but when I published it with the release on Comic Book, it was very notable that Toni Storm's name was not in the mix, but, pretty much all the other women that interrupted on this segment were in the mix. So,
well, yeah, I mean, they announced, it's official on the When Worlds Collide page that Storm and Ripley are working. So, yeah, I guess you're right. It is kind of.
Well, they advertised, like, the tweet said her first challenger. Well,
clearly
her first challenger is Toni Storm then.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's mixed messaging.
Yeah, so that was a little confusing. But, yeah, she verbally accepted the challenge right away before all the other women interrupted. But the crowd loved that segment, to get Toni Storm out there from the UK, to get Kaylee Ray out there. You got all the, the big women's stars that aren't on Raw and SmackDown out there pretty much in front of you right off the bat. And then they started the Dusty Classic during the show this week. The first one had Imperium, also a UK team, taking on the Forgotten Sons. This was okay, not much of a match, but Imperium won, predictably. Austin Theory was on here, got the win in the next match. And then probably this or the main event match of the show, Undisputed Era, Dusty Rhodes Tag Classic match against Gallus, the UK Tag Champions. Undisputed Era won when Cole interfered, but that was a really good match. Thought that one was really good. And then in the 4-way at the end of the show, you had Damian Priest, Keith Lee, Dominic Dijakovic, and Cameron Grimes to become the number one contender for the North American title. And I think, as you would predict, Keith Lee got the victory, so no issue there whatsoever. Oh, yeah, there was also a Mia Yim squash match that I didn't mention over Caden Carter. So
where Chelsea Green
debuted, yes.
Also, don't forget Time Splitters in NXT.
They did announce that. Yep, Alex Shelley is coming in to team up with his former partner Kushida, so they will be in the Dusty Classic as well. So that was a cool announcement, and Chelsea Green is in that Battle Royal next week for the number one contendership as well. That was in the release. So it sounds like, from listening to you guys talk about AEW, I didn't see it, but from what you guys are saying, sure sounds like NXT probably won the week this week.
I'll be very blunt with you, and I know we're going to talk about, the kind of the big news item coming out of that show here in a moment. I thought Raw was better than both Wednesday shows this week. NXT almost wins by default. It was very much the solid yet unspectacular version of NXT that we get some weeks. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, that was a takeover worthy show." This was not that, certainly, but it was okay. There was no booking faux pas on the program. I think all the right people went over. You mentioned Keith Lee going over in the 4-way to determine the number one contender for the North American title. That was clearly the correct call. Mm-hmm. I think the correct teams went over in both Dusty Classic matches. As far as that women's opening segment, you get a lot of people out there. I kind of over the whole, multiple people come out to interrupt each other, and that leads to a tag team or 6-person match, but whatever. So, yeah, I mean, NXT wins like just by default because AEW, I thought, particularly that first hour, was actively bad. But Raw was a better show than both Wednesday shows this week.
Yeah, I saw Raw intermittently, but not the entire show yet. So I'll probably go back through the Hulu version as I've been doing lately with the the shortened time. But let's transition to the CM Punk story because I know we wanted to talk about this. This is the one that I think the first time I heard from you guys this morning, this is the topic that came up. So The Miz was the guest on WWE Backstage last night, and Punk not on the show. And Kyle, do you want to take it from here and explain what happened with the Miz and the clip and CM Punk's response, or do you want me to read it verbatim?
Well, if you've got it verbatim, you can go.
I do have it in front of me. So basically, the Miz, like after the show, the WWE on Fox account put up a video of him. They said it was the best show so far, and Renee Young and Paige were saying that when Punk came back, that was the best show. And Miz says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't change the culture."
What a fucking legend.
Of course, quoting CM Punk from years ago. And
the first show back.
Oh, he also said that there. I guess it's kind of his trademark line, but yeah, he did say it there. You're right. And then we got Punk in a since deleted tweet where he quote tweeted that and wrote, "Go suck a blood money covered dick, you effing dork."
Saudi Arabia, wasn't there a Saudi Arabia reference in there somewhere? Or no?
Yeah, just blood money covered dick in Saudi Arabia, you effing dork. That's right. The article I was looking at didn't have Saudi Arabia in there for some reason, but I see the tweet below. Yes, so yeah, that's what he said. Since deleted, but of course, when you're CM Punk and you got millions of followers, people screenshot it. It's kind of pointless to delete a tweet after the fact, but he did. It's gone. Your thoughts, Justin Joint?
I think Miz comes out looking a whole lot better than CM Punk on this one, especially when you consider. He was already talking about how maybe building a bridge back to WWE, in whichever form that would take. But I don't know. It felt weak. I mean, he's picking at low fruit. I thought Miz's burn was much better and creative, especially since CM Punk hasn't done shit to change the culture.
Kyle?
Yeah, what Justin said. My thought exactly. Okay, if you're like an anti-WWE person, you're like, ooh, he brought up blood money in Saudi Arabia. And look, we all know that that's a scuzzy deal. Okay, not the scuzziest thing currently going on in the Middle East, but it's a scuzzy deal nonetheless. Okay. But like, it just came across like CM Punk was gotten to, if you're familiar with that phrase. It's like, dude, like, Justin referenced the word creative. Come up with a more creative thing than that. Like, if you're the Miz, that was a really funny line to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for his character. Like, for Punk, it was just like, it felt like an overreaction.
I'd say so.
It's kind of like playing into these like dead Miz narratives. I feel, there's certain, prominent wrestling writers, who I think still kind of cling to these bad Miz narratives, incorrect Miz narratives. People forget that Talking Smack promo we cut against Daniel Bryan was absolutely phenomenal.
I was just going to bring that up. What a god that, he was able to get under Daniel Bryan's skin like that, and kind of the same kind of situation. And now with CM Punk, I mean, Jesus, I hope everybody appropriately loves the Miz now, and before we lose them and miss what we had.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I'm not going to say that 10 years ago I was a big fan of the Miz, but we've been super complimentary towards him on this program for years now. I mean, there was a couple of years there where we were very vocal about him being the best heel in the business. And I agree. I do think that people that haven't been following the product much the last few years, which of course would include Punk, they don't realize how good this guy has been. And yeah, so he's way off base with that, but also he's off base with the type of language he used. Now, obviously he used really profane language, but I thought it was a little ridiculous. And this is me talking as a CM Punk fan. I'd like to see Punk wrestle again. That he's using such, homophobic language like that. To use that kind of wording, I thought was a bit odd for the straight edge superstar, the guy that portrays himself on Twitter as being progressive. I thought that was a terrible choice of words. Did you guys note that as well?
No, not really. I mean, like I said, I just felt it was like gotten to. Like it was just an overreaction. Like, whoa, dude. Like if you were sitting next to him,
mm-hmm.
and he would say, like, if they were talking to each other instead of tweeting,
mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there, like I would have like turned to like Punk and like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I just thought, I noted that. I thought the language and the specific insult that he used was pretty poor. So that was disappointing as well.
It just, I don't know. It was I don't know. It was almost kind of like embarrassing too.
Yeah.
It came off as like, if he wasn't straight edge, you would assume that was a middle of the night, been drinking for a while.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're right.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe things have changed in the world of Phil Brooks, for all we know. But
I thought that was a good line Justin had too, when he hasn't changed anything. Like the irony of like, I just changed the culture, and like, let's be honest, like he hasn't really like changed anything. He's just said like he's taken a couple easy softballs that anyone could criticize and criticize that. But yeah, it's come on now.
All right. So the other news this week we want to hit on is the Brock Lesnar situation, with him on Raw revealing that not only will he be in the Royal Rumble, but he will be entering from the number 1 position. So Kyle, you were very positive on this week's Raw. What did you think when you heard about this?
It's interesting. I think like a lot of people, I immediately gravitated towards, okay, why are they doing this? And you kind of quickly come to the conclusion of, okay, this is going to be a setup, because he's not going to win. That would be atrocious. Okay, that'd be like the worst possible thing to have Brock Lesnar go wire to wire and win, right? And plus, I'm kind of sick of that gimmick anyway, of guys coming in early and like from the 1 and 2 position and winning. That actually got overdone. But, it's like, okay, well, this is going to set up his Mania match where someone's going to throw him out. And that's, how they're going to start that. Kind of an interesting deal to speculate on. I know we're going to do that in a moment. I know Justin kind of has pointed out some things off air where, there's some logic gaps. Like, why would Brock Lesnar, the character, do this? And it's basically just kind of a means to an end, where it doesn't make sense for his character, but WWE's doing it because, for the reasons we just laid out, that they don't have any other ideas how to set up his Mania match.
It's lazy storytelling to me. It's like we don't know how to set it up, and this is the only way we can think of, even though this doesn't really sync with his character. This character who shows up every once in a while and wrestles a 10-minute match, doesn't really give a shit about anything, and now all of a sudden he wants to prove he can conquer everybody by wrestling a match that he would have to be in there for over an hour in order to win. It just doesn't work for me. And talking about him winning, there isn't enough water in this world to keep him hydrated enough to work an hour.
Yeah, he would be like, there'd be like a new color. He would go from like purple to like something, like that we haven't even, a color we have not even named yet.
So let's just go to that right now. I mean, who do we think is going to be the opponent, or who would you like to see the opponent? Because we've been talking about this off air, like you said, Kyle, and there's been reports about this, that it would seem like it's going to be somebody unexpected, possibly from NXT. I know I have pretty firm thoughts on who I would like to see it be. You guys have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's 4 names that I've seen bandied about by multiple people, and well, I'll just mention all 4. The one that would be bad would be Cain Velasquez.
Very bad.
Just
very bad.
Based on how ho-hum that first deal went. Now, I know Kane had a knee injury, but I don't know. If that was the case, then they should have just tabled it for a later date.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they just shouldn't have done it. I know that, again, CM Punk, Saudi Arabia, blood money, and dicks were involved, but, table it because it just made Cain Velasquez look real bad. Yep. Okay? So I hope it's not that, but I think it's a possibility. I know a lot of people really want to see Matt Riddle. I don't think it's going to be that. Just because that's just not something that, while to a certain segment of the fan base that would mean a lot, it's just to another part of the fan base it would mean absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So could it happen? Could it happen? Maybe. I love Matt Riddle, but I don't think that's going to be that's going to happen either. I think it's going to be one of two people, and both are Raw guys. One is Aleister Black. Meltzer floated that name out on Wrestling Observer Radio, I think either today or yesterday. I know for a fact that Paul Heyman was pushing, as of like 8 weeks ago, for Aleister Black to be Brock Lesnar's WrestleMania opponent. So Aleister Black, I think, is in the discussion. Now, what's interesting, we talked about Raw on Monday, there were two guys back-to-back that were booked to look really impressive in their matches. Black was one of them, but he was attacked by Buddy Murphy afterwards to set up a match next week. The other was Drew McIntyre, and I think that's the other name we need to talk about. Very interesting the last 2 weeks where all of a sudden he's a babyface.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that whole post-match thing where he kicked No Way Jose's ass, even though No Way Jose is an alleged babyface, was clearly babyface stuff. Getting the crowd to count to 3 before the Claymore kicks. McIntyre cutting the promo, I've never gotten a world title shot. So they clearly positioned him as a possibility as well. So those are the 4 names that I came up with.
Okay.
Pretty shocking turn of events from these masters of narrative, the WWE writers.
The masters of narrative. I love that. What are your thoughts, Justin? Who would you like to see in this position, or who do you think it's going to be?
I mean, if I had to put money, I'd probably say Cain Velasquez. As much as I don't want to see that, I am one of those marks that would love it to be like Matt Riddle or Keith Lee. I think to me, it almost has to be, for some of this story to make sense, it almost has to be an NXT Smackdown guy. But then again, you get into the whole situation with the title belts and what brand they're on and whatnot. I could get behind McIntyre or Black. I really could. I just have some concerns with what that story would be and how they would tell it.
Yeah. I could absolutely get behind those two as well. I think those would both be solid matches. I could see them making it exciting. I think for me, yeah, the Matt Riddle thing, because they've got years of Matt Riddle calling him out, would be my top choice. Now, I understand that for people that aren't hardcore wrestling fans, the more general audience, they don't follow that kind of thing, it probably won't be as exciting, as Kyle mentioned. But for me, that would be my top choice. If I'm just fantasy booking, Matt Riddle coming out would be awesome. But my second choice would be Keith Lee. And Keith Lee's a guy, we talked about this last week on the program, who I kind of felt when they did the NXT number 1 contender match that Finn Balor won, that he should have won that week, because Keith Lee, as far as the men's roster goes in NXT, he's been as hot as anybody. And I kind of felt like they should have, they should have ran with that. They had a chance there. They didn't do it. And like we said earlier, he did win the NXT North American number 1 contendership this week. But that's like a step down. I mean, this is a guy that should be in your world title picture. That's like, going from the Universal title to the Intercontinental title.
Yeah, I do too. I do think that that's their way of course correction. That's like a very
I think it probably is, but like for me looking at it, it's still a step down.
That it's very WWE too. I'm with you just from a psychology perspective. I hate when they take especially when it's a baby face, who's pretty hot, and he like loses, like a world title match or in some other kind of big scenario, and then he then goes back to dominating the step below.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's kind of poor storytelling. An example of this, just to give the listener something tangible, would be like Rey Mysterio a few weeks ago. And I was shocked no one brought this up. He loses the match to Lesnar. And then he just wins the U.S. title not soon thereafter. That was a transition deal to Almas, and those two are going to have some bangers, which is cool. But I think that's just an example where it's like, you have a guy, here's a guy, he's going for the world title. Well, he loses. Pretty clean, too, as a babyface. And then he gets a U.S. title match and he wins. It actually kind of makes the U.S. title kind of shitty. Or any secondary title, for that matter. That's just me. I could be picking nits there. I don't know.
All I heard was Dominic is eliminating Lesnar in the Rumble to set up a WrestleMania match.
Let's just, this is kind of a different tact to take with it. One thing that I have not liked about Rumbles in recent years, and I think this is as they've, really it goes back even more just recent years, maybe even 15 years since Pat Patterson's fingerprints stopped being in the match. It's been less segmented. If you go back and watch a lot of the earlier Rumbles, they were very segmented, right? Like they had different parts, and you can remember. Like if I bring up the 1994 Royal Rumble, the early part of the Rumble, what do you think of?
The 94 Rumble, the early part of the Rumble?
Yes. The diesel push.
Okay, yeah.
But that happened, but then it ended, and then they went to tell other storylines, and Luger got some shine. Bret Hart comes in. There are different segments to the Rumble, and they've gotten away from that. And I personally don't like that when it's just kind of like one long continuous stream of guys coming out. Mm-hmm. I prefer the old way. I prefer the Patterson way. That's just me personally. And I'm bringing this up because with Lesnar, I think you're gonna have it a little maybe more segmented where, okay, it's going to be the Lesnar show early on where he is gonna dominate, and then somebody's gonna come out and you're gonna have a good, 2 minutes there, and then who knows if that's the guy who eliminates him or what, or if that guy comes out a few spots after. I prefer the Rumble segmented rather than one long continuous stream of guys coming out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it normally builds to 2, 3, or 4 moments. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just, while you were talking, another name sprung to mind that I'd like to see for Lesnar, and that's Kofi, if not Big E.
Both those guys should be in the mix. Big E, for sure, is a guy who would not be a bad choice to toss him and be the match. I have no faith that it'll be Kofi after the way that the title change went down. I do think you do have to have Kofi get in the mix with him and at least get some shine, Yeah. And I think that's actually going to happen. I would be surprised if that happens. Didn't happen, I should say.
Yeah, I'd love to see Big E, but and the more I think about it with the fantasy booking here, Matt Riddle, Keith Lee, I still think Keith Lee. Well, Keith Lee might be my top choice actually, but either of those two I think would be ideal. But yeah, we'll see.
Another thing with Rumbles and what makes a Rumble, certain Rumbles work and maybe others not as much is, just the people that are in them. The more viable people you have, the better it is. This is not a match that succeeds based on work rate. Remember, it's just a battle royal, essentially. It's a match that works because of star power. Yes, Ric Flair in 1992 probably turned in the best individual performance we've ever seen in any Royal Rumble. Mm-hmm. But don't kid yourselves, folks. The reason that match worked so well was the star power. Go back and watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I bring this up because, they're doing, what is it? It's 10 Raw, 10 NXT, 10 SmackDown, correct?
Yeah.
We should theoretically be getting the best of each show.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you narrow it down to 10 people, I would hope so.
Yeah, I just looking at some of the names that were announced from Raw, I'm like, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have, some of these people where it's, there's nothing worse than watching a Rumble where you get like 3 or 4 guys in a row, or like 8 of 10 even, which is like worse when you're like, this guy's got no fucking chance.
Mm-hmm.
That's bad.
Yeah.
It's like 95 when like the Blue Brothers come out.
Oh.
And Vince McMahon, bless his soul, had the balls to say, Dick Murdoch's going to WrestleMania.
You mean we're not going to get the return of Duke the Dumpster Drosy?
I believe he was in that Rumble as well. Yes.
Absolutely.
I've got fingers crossed for 9 and 10 this year being Jay White and Sean Spears.
Don't fucking
fingers crossed.
Don't you fucking start with that. You put
Kyle Ross, that'd be the best Royal Rumble of all time, and you know it.
That was, I think I may have lost a friend, by the way, legitimately, by telling him that what year was that? Was that 2017 when Dillinger was number 10?
Sounds
and it was
right.
He was still in NXT, and I was like, what a stupid thing that was. Just so a bunch of freaking marks can chant 10 while a bunch of people scratch their heads. The guy doesn't even come out or look important. And how just business is exposing is it the guy who chants 10 gets number 10? Dumb.
So obvious.
Dumb.
Yeah.
But Justin Joint was the one who put your boy, the chairman, Sean Spears, up to that tweet, wasn't it? It was you, Justin.
Imagine he's got the inside track to
we're going to talk
tie
about
in
this.
Peyton's place.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about a potential NXT AEW business partnership here momentarily. But let me, you want to know what a negative of that would be? A Sean Spears Jay White match coming to fruition. Good Lord, I could not think of a worse match to make in the year 2020.
I think it'd be a terrific second match of the night. And that's about it.
As long as they give it less time than Kerry Von Erich, Dino Bravo at WrestleMania 7, I agree.
In the chat room, Larry wants to know, do we think Edge is going to be in the Rumble, yes or no? That's been the rumor that's been out there, and Edge has pushed back on that pretty vocally. But
which, of course, means, that means anytime, somebody a WWE person pushes back on something, yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah, because, that's an area where you don't have to do a whole lot in the Rumble. They can protect him. Obviously, you got to take a little bump to leave the ring, but and I always think where there's smoke, there's fire, and yeah, it kind of seems to me like he's going to be doing something here in the next few months. So why not the Rumble?
Although, again, I'm probably overthinking things. With the 10 Raw, 10 NXT, 10 SmackDown, this seems like a year where we need to go to Mean Gene Okerlund in the event center, and we're going to get all 30 people named. Not like the last couple of years where, they don't even, there are just kind of like these random NXT surprises and we don't even know the 30 names. So, that kind of logistically would make it maybe a little more difficult for Edge. I don't know if they do an injury angle and Edge just happened to be there that night. But, logistically that might be interesting. I do think as far as where there's smoke, there's fire, Ryan, to borrow your phrase, he's probably doing something soon. If it's not the Rumble, it's something else.
Yeah. By the way, I love the old Mean Gene Event Center. That's one of the things I've liked AEW and their YouTube videos. They kind of do that with Tony Schiavone. That similar scenario. I used to love that as a kid.
That was like the highlight of the old syndicated shows, because you would actually like get some sort of like advancement. Because you have like your 5 squash matches. Maybe there would be an angle, but usually they would run like something resembling a major angle like once every 3 weeks on those shows. The event centers where you learned about the matches. It was so cool. I used to like especially for WrestleMania, they would announce like 5 or 6 matches a week. Man, I would just like be like sitting on the couch shaking, waiting for that to come on. And that classic WrestleMania music.
Oh yes, oh
not
hell
that
yes.
Not that shite Linda McMahon used, in the 2000s.
I actually like that one too. They used that in the mid '90s originally. I think that was like 96, 97.
The long form version with lyrics is very bad.
That is, I do have the album with that on it, and that is very bad. But the instrumental's not bad. I like it. Before we transition to the topic that we're going to finish on, the big topic that you see if you're on YouTube in our header image here, Derek Strappel, friend of the show, maybe the unofficial fourth host of Top Rope Nation. He's been on this show a number of times. Got a question here in the chat room. So to wrap this all up on the Wednesday Night Wars this week, Derek asks, did Memphis make AEW look bad? Of course, the show emanated this week just south of Memphis in northern Mississippi in South Haven. And I don't know, because I didn't see it. I'll ask you guys, how was the crowd? Did they show any of that Memphis wrestling tribute that they had promoted, Kyle?
No, they didn't show any of it. Apparently, it's going to be on AEW After Dark. I understand that. You're trying to do all this stuff in a 2-hour show.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I talk about you're trying to attract new viewers. As much as, I love Memphis wrestling, I certainly know Derek does. Maybe that's not the best use of your 2-hour time. The people who want to see that are going to seek it out on After Dark. So I didn't actually have a huge problem with that being relegated to that. Dave Brown came out and did commentary for the opening bit. At 73 years young, he was certainly better than Brandy Rhodes in that spot as the fourth wheel. So I didn't think the crowd was the issue. I thought the booking was the issue. Certainly was nothing with Memphis.
I still think that's bizarre, though, to advertise that. They mentioned on the broadcast last week to not show anything.
You're right. What they should have done, I guess, in hindsight, is just have that as the local advertising. You're right, because it was advertised television, TV-wise. It was like, an ode to Memphis. And other than Dave Brown appearing in a Lenny Poffo cup of coffee promo, there really was no ode to Memphis. They showed the guys, at ringside, MJF insulting them, including the Boogie Woogie man, Jimmy Valiant. What a absolute treasure he is. But there really was for the show to be advertised as being built around that, and there really was not much. You're right. If it was WWE, they would have been raked over the coals for it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Ryan's going to have a conniption shit when he finds out Jericho was crapping on Elvis Presley there at the end of the show.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
On his birthday? On the birthday of the King of Rock and Roll? Really?
Yeah.
He did. What an absolute beauty.
I guess that is the ultimate heel move when you're in the Memphis metropolitan area.
He said the Beatles were better.
Oh, God.
That is not a false statement.
I disagree.
Nor was that, Justin.
I disagree, personally. If I could listen to one of the... I love the Beatles. They're in my top 5. But if I could listen to one, I don't know, man. I think each artist has a lot of bad songs. Elvis did a lot of bad musicals he was forced to do and stuff in the 60s. But I prefer Elvis. He's a better singer. But...
I prefer the honky tonk man.
The Beatles were great songwriters, which was a whole different era where people were writing their own music and everything like that, and better with the instruments, of course. But I think Elvis Presley had one of the greatest singing voices of all time. Sam Cooke is up there as well for me. But yeah, if you want to hear me talk Elvis Presley, you can tune into a little plug here, the TCB Cast. Another podcast that I've been on a number of times. They do a great historical music podcast, so check that out. But I suppose, Chris Jericho, when you're in Memphis, Tennessee, you want to earn some heel heat.
Who knows if he even meant it? That's what you do. Don't be gotten to. Don't start tweeting, blood money.
No, I know Chris Jericho is actually a pretty big Elvis fan. He's tweeted about it before.
Don't be tweeting about blood money and dicks to Chris Jericho.
Don't be cruel. Don't be cruel is the term you should be using right now. Don't be cruel.
Don't be cruel. There we go. Very good. By the way, it's whenever somebody mentions the Beatles now, I always think of this odd conversation I had with my wife's uncle, who absolutely does not listen to this show, so I can bring it up. My wife or her uncle, for that matter. But we were he brought up the Beatles. He's like, yeah, really like the Beatles' early stuff, but then they turned to drugs, and I lean over to my wife. I'm like, I cannot tell you how I think the exact opposite about the Beatles.
Yeah, I like their later stuff better too.
Yeah,
but hey, all I'm gonna say is without Elvis, you don't have the Beatles. So that's my trump card I'm gonna play. The Beatles themselves were huge Elvis fans, and I gotta say, one of the all-time what ifs, the night that those two musical acts came together in Los Angeles, and they supposedly had a jam session at Elvis's house out there in California. How the hell did nobody have the foresight to record that? Can you imagine if there was a tape of that? That would be
no millennials with their iPhones.
True, but I mean, a few years earlier at Sun Studio, had that $1 Million Quartet. Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, all in Sun Studio at the same time. They made a freaking Broadway musical about that one. Can you imagine the Elvis and the Beatles, like the two biggest musical stars of the 20th century? I would give anything to hear that. That would be awesome.
Something tells me they were probably making my wife's uncle mad.
Yeah. That's true. Supposedly George Harrison was smoking pot the entire night in the backyard with some of the Memphis Mafia. So,
fucking legend.
Yeah, George is my favorite Beatle. But
guys, we're losing our base.
Anyways, tune into the TCB cast for more of that talk. But good topic there with Derek and Memphis. I'm surprised Derek wasn't at the show tonight, unfortunately. But yeah. I'll have to check it out on replay and see what happens. So before we get to the topic of the week, we're going to do this giveaway with the T-shirt. So if you're in our chat room right now, you want to win the T-shirt, you need to be subscribed to our YouTube channel. So go ahead and do that if you haven't already. And if you guys are listening on the podcast feed, you're missing out. If you want to join us live, stay tuned to the Twitter page at Top Rope Nation, where you can find out when and where we will be streaming each and every week. Well, where will be YouTube, but when, that's kind of up in the air right now. Last week we did Monday night. We're here Wednesday night this week. But we're going to do some giveaways like this periodically. And so for those of you that are here right now that followed the instructions on Twitter, here is the trivia question to win the Being the Elite T-shirt I have to send out in the mail. The trivia question is, in 1986... WWF WrestleMania 2 occurred in 3 cities. If you're in the chat, give me the 3 cities and the 3 venues that WrestleMania 2 occurred in. And we will wait and see. Do you guys know the answer while they're typing it out right now?
Is a bear shit in the woods?
I know you guys know the cities, but do you know the venues?
Yes.
Okay. Justin, do you think you could get this one?
Nope.
Ooh. I was pretty sure I knew it. I did have to double check the venues just to make sure I was right, and I was. So waiting on the answer to come in the chat room. Again, you need to be subscribed on the YouTube channel. You need to be following the @TopRopeNation Twitter account. You need to be apparently Googling the answer right now. Derek Chappelle, you don't know the answer to this right off the bat. Larry, I know you guys are out there chatting in the chat room right now. I'm going to give this a going once, twice, and nobody's winning the T-shirt if I don't get an answer here pretty soon.
Yeah, move it to next week.
I might have to. If I don't get an answer in 10 seconds.
I'm going to join in and win it right now.
We're going to try this again next week. All right, I'm counting it down.
I'll give these people some time, maybe.
Doesn't take that long to Google.
It does not. We should know it by now. If you type in WrestleMania 2 on Google, the answer would come up by now. Okay. Larry says no clue. LOL. Okay, I guess we'll try this again next week.
I like Larry's honesty.
I think Derek's like on the can right now or something. I don't know where he went. But the answer is Los Angeles, California, Chicago, Illinois, New York, New York. The venues were the LA Sports Coliseum, the Rosemont Horizon, now the Allstate Arena, and the Nassau Coliseum. Derek comes in with the Silver Dome, Madison Square Garden, and that's all I got. Okay.
What?
Nope. Nobody got it. Unbelievable. Guys, there's not enough live viewers right now. I see we have a few people watching, but apparently the T-shirt giveaway is going to live on. So if you're listening on the podcast feed, guys, you could have easily won. You guys are probably kicking yourselves right now saying you knew it right away. I tried to give away a free T-shirt from Pro Wrestling Tees, and you guys failed. I don't know what else to say. So we'll try it again next week. If you guys are in the chat room right now, tune in next week, and we will do this again. Okay, the topic of the week is Wrestle Kingdom 14. And
by the way, WrestleMania 2 sucked.
It did. It was awful. The highlight was the 85 Bears involvement in the Battle Royal.
There was a couple good tag matches.
And the Bulldogs match, I would say.
Don't sleep on the Funks against JYD and Tito either, actually.
Stop derailing us, Kyle.
So, the topic of the week, AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling. Should they have a relationship? I think we would all agree, probably yes. But coming out of this weekend, guys, I've watched more New Japan this week than any other company, easily. I mean, they had 3 shows. I did watch all of Wrestle Kingdom's second day. I saw the big matches from the first day, and I kind of skimmed through New Year's Dash. And I got to tell you, I'm someone, we've talked about New Japan in the past. I do like New Japan a lot. I felt like the excitement level with the company died down a little bit over the last year, but I am hooked again. I'm all in on this company. I enjoyed these shows so much. It was so fresh. And I saw someone make a good point somewhere. I don't know if it was on Twitter. I think it actually might have been the Observer board somewhere. But they were saying that, New Japan may have actually benefited by the Elite guys leaving because they were such a focus of the show. And the show just feels a lot more balanced now because, not everything is about the Bullet Club. Not everything is about the Elite anymore. And, man, these were really good shows, and I really enjoyed them. And I'm looking forward to watching all the upcoming New Japan shows more than I had been before. I feel like I said, it's just fresh, and I really enjoyed the shows a lot. Kyle, I know you tuned in a little bit, and you've got some thoughts on the 2-day Wrestle Kingdom. Do you feel like I do? Do you feel like New Japan is kind of on the up and up here?
I think maybe the decline was overstated.
I just feel like they lost. I mean, they always put on great wrestling matches. We talked last week, Will Ospreay, Wrestler of the Year and everything, but I just kind of felt like, I don't know, they just kind of went to the back burner a little bit, but I don't know. I feel like they're hitting their stride a little bit now again and kind of coming out of the weekend hot.
For what I watch that promotion for, you generally get out of it what you want. I feel like, so I think the decline was a little overstated. Tonight, it's kind of funny. The shows were really good, but man, if somebody were just jumping out of the live stream right now and I said too long, too many title matches, they would think we were talking about a WWE show. And see, this program is objective. And I feel that needs to be brought up. I think those of us who were willing to entertain the notion of WrestleMania being a 2-day event, I feel less strongly about that after watching Wrestle Kingdom. I thought that was like one of the big takeaways for me.
Mm-hmm. They do have a lot of titles, that is true. Justin, were you able to tune in at all to any of this?
I was not, but I do want to ask, but they have a lot of sorry, but filler 3-on-3 matches, even regardless of all their title matches. I think WWE would be able to pull off a 2-night event better.
The problem is, though, that these promotions are so or have this mentality that not that less is more, that more is more, and that's wrong. You do 2-day to split up the time, but it's just more wrestling. It's just too much.
Yeah, I don't think this is something that's going to continue. I think it worked out perfectly this year with it happening on a weekend.
Yeah, and they wanted to build, obviously, to the double title match. So there was a reason for it. But I don't know. I just don't think it's viable. If you were to do 2 3-hour shows, if some promotion actually had the discipline to do 2 3-hour shows, okay. But like, it becomes excess, man. And I'm not as keen on the idea of WWE trying it as I was, as maybe I would have been beforehand.
Yeah, it is a lot to watch. I tried to watch the second night live, and I did watch about the first 2 hours live, and I was falling asleep. I couldn't do it. I don't know how these people in North America watch these shows live. But
and yeah, and I wonder that too, like, because there were a lot of people who were saying that second, it's like, oh boy. And it's like, I wonder if because of the time of day, if that has a factor in it, people are just kind of gassed. Yeah, I don't know how people do it either, man. And it's fine, New Japan, its target audience, they're more willing to, obviously stay up in the wee hours to watch a lot of wrestling, or, they're willing to just put in the time to watch all that wrestling. They'll stop it, come back to it later. Yeah, WWE, I just don't, I don't think it's the right call.
Yeah. No, I would agree. Yeah, I watched the first 2 hours of night 2 live, and then the next morning I was kind of in and out trying to watch the final 2 hours, avoided spoilers, watched all of that, and then I went back and, of course, watched the night 1, like the bigger matches that everyone was talking about, like Ibushi and Okada, and that was very good, really, really good. I wasn't surprised at all that Naito won. No, in the end.
He needed obvious. To, and they had built to it. Yes.
Yeah.
What about Kenta being elevated to that position?
Now, I love that. I was going to ask you guys that. I thought the way it ended was great. I mean, I thought Kenta's involvement, that got me wanting to tune back in. To be honest, I thought it ended on a high note. I actually liked all of that, and him, standing over, sitting on Naito at the end. I thought was great. What did you make of it?
Should have been King Corbin.
That would have drawn some heat. I don't know, because there's an argument, like, again, if it's WWE, people would have said, "Oh, they didn't let the big babyface title win get room to breathe." Mm-hmm. They're just trying to draw heat, and I'm not as in love with Kenta as some people are.
So I thought obviously it was derailed by injuries, but his WWE run was clearly forgettable. But,
yeah, but I don't know. I mean, like, this narrative, Kenta's back. He's better, but I mean, what are we comparing to? That WWE run, stunk. That doesn't mean, just because you're, better than that doesn't mean, we need to, start, heaping oodles of praise on you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I thought it was good. I'm looking forward to the future.
I guess for me, it's I still want to wait and see with him. I think it all depends on how good that feud plays out, which is, I guess, true for any angle.
Well, I'll say Kazuchika Okada for me is still one of my top 5 wrestlers. This guy is amazing. Clear case for best wrestler of the last decade. Yep. I knew he was probably dropping the title, so that wasn't disappointing as a fan or anything, but always love watching him work. I know I was super disappointed when I went to a Ring of Honor New Japan show a couple years back and he didn't work it, because I'd love to see him work in person. I know he was at the Mania in New Orleans that we went to. Of course, didn't work it, but he was there. He was in the vicinity.
Stayed in my Airbnb.
Yeah. But someone I was fortunate enough to see wrestle at one point in time wrestled his farewell match, and then on New Year's Dash had the the retirement send off. I don't know if you guys saw that with Jushin Thunder Liger, but
another highlight. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a definite highlight of the weekend.
Absolutely awesome. What'd you say, Justin?
Heard of him?
Yeah. We talked about it. You can check the archives on our Patreon page where we reviewed Super Brawl 2 back on, God, when was that? How many months ago was that? It's been a few months, but it's in the Top Rope Nation Classics archives. So you can check that as well as the first Nitro. But I did see Liger wrestle in 1999 at a WCW house show. Wrestled Psychosis.
That's incredible.
Psychosis, WCW house show here in Iowa in December of 99. I believe it was December 4th, 1999. So I do consider myself pretty fortunate to have seen Jushin Thunder Liger wrestle in person. Have either of you guys had a chance to see him during his career?
No, not in person. Of course, you were also less fortunate to have, attended a December 1999 WCW house show.
Dude, that house show actually was pretty amazing when I look back. You know what the main event was? It was Bret Hart and I believe it was Bret Hart and Sting and Flair, and this was when Bret was the WCW champion, and I think it was Flair and Benoit in the semi-main too. Let me look it up while you talk.
Old Flair and Redacted, huh?
Yeah.
I suppose that a 1999 WCW house show certainly has the potential to be a lot better than 1999 WCW television from that Russo era, because the performers are going to be left to their own devices. And you still had some pretty talented people under contract at that time.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. It was so long ago, it's kind of hard to find the results here. I can't remember. It was either Bret and Sting or it was Bret and Benoit, and then it was Flair and Sting. It's some combination. I know those four were in the two main events. I don't know. Not a big deal, but looking back, and Kurt Hennig was on that show too. So, hell, that was a good house show, even though it was a pretty poor era for WCW. So
he was doing the work. He was the henchman for the powers that be.
Yes. Yeah, I'm typing in WCW results, and I did find it the other night. I know I had looked it up, and cannot find it. Even the history of WWE doesn't have.
I was just going on there. I was going to try to help you.
I know. I'm pretty sure it was December 4th, 99. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, it was Benoit and Flair, Bret and Sting. That's right. Liger and Psychosis, Jarrett and Dustin Rhodes, Hennig and Disco Inferno.
Oh boy!
But a lot of big stars on that show. Looking back, not a bad show. So, yeah, Jushin Liger retired, and obviously, as far as junior heavyweights go, probably did more than anyone to advance.
Did the Harris twins work that show? Were they creative control at that point?
Maybe. Yeah, let me see. Yes, they did, against Jim Duggan and Chavo Guerrero. Yes.
Oh my God! All right, I wish I was there now.
Actually, I remember that because I think this was around the time Jim Duggan he was doing the cancer battle stuff. Yeah, I remember that now. I don't know. I have some pictures from that show laying around here somewhere, but. Jushin Thunder Liger, best wishes. Legendary wrestler, always there at the top of the list with the junior heavyweights, and of course his match with Pillman. We've raved about that one in the past. So what do we think about, to wrap this up, New Japan and AEW? Is it likely? Should it happen? Yes, I think we'd all agree with that. But do we actually think it is going to happen? Any thoughts on this one, Mr. Joint?
What I'm curious about is who needs it more?
I'd say AEW needs it more, to be honest.
I would initially agree, but with New Japan, you get some TNT exposure.
Yeah, that's true, because they did lose their North American TV with Axis, who's with Impact now because of the ownership situation.
Yeah, how about Impact trying to strong arm its way to a deal? Wow, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. New Japan just drew 40,000 in the Tokyo Dome, so they clearly don't need AEW. But as far as their North American expansion goes, that's a good point.
Yeah, it would help. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons it's a no-brainer. New Japan does probably want a U.S. dance partner. I think we talked about this 10 months or so ago. I think it was apparent to anyone with a set of eyes that Ring of Honor was no longer worthy of being that dance partner with that their hideous contributions to that Mania weekend show. And then, Impact trying to strong arm its way to a relationship is just embarrassing. So it makes a lot of sense for New Japan. I think right now AEW actually doesn't need it. And if they did or do, that's a bad sign that they've already got to go to that card. Because AEW, I mean, Dynamite and this promotion is not very old. Right now, they need to be kind of working through the kinks of their own roster. Let's make some stars. Let's establish some guys. This is something you should not need. 3 months after your national television debut, you're already like, you need another promotion to come in to kind of spruce you up. I mean, that's not a good sign, quite frankly. So I do think it'll happen down the line. Certainly the fan base wants it. That's key. It's something that, the AEW fan base would really want, but I don't think you do it right away. And I didn't see anyone mention this, and we should go back to Wrestle Kingdom and bring this up. So I know a lot of people were talking about the Jericho-Tanahashi match and the stipulation. Were you a little disappointed that Jericho went over? Were you kind of like, oh, I hope if he loses, then this relationship is a real thing, and then we're going to get, Jericho-Tanahashi on AEW? What was your feeling on that?
I absolutely was disappointed. I will say that, because yes, it would have been a clear indication they were going to be working together, and that's what I was hoping for. I thought when Moxley won the U.S. title, that was a good sign, because I felt like, it made sense for him to have that title over the summer because AEW wasn't going full time yet. And so, he was kind of living out that dream of working New Japan and everything. And then I thought when he won it back, at this point in time, it just kind of seemed like that might be a sign that something's progressing, because why put that title on him right now? But then when Jericho won, I was pretty disappointed by that personally. And I thought, Jericho's comments about, what he said about AEW working with New Japan was a good sign, though.
And he referenced Wrestle Kingdom on the show tonight.
Did he?
Yes, he said, we all won our matches at Wrestle Kingdom, was the line.
Yeah, I'm going to actually, if you guys want to stand by, I'm going to play the comments that Jericho said about AEW working with New Japan.
Put aside all the hurt feelings, put aside all the egos, put aside all of the issues and politics, and concentrate on great wrestling matches and big business. I haven't been doing this at the highest of levels for 29 years. As what some people say, the greatest of all time, because I'm a stupid businessman. I can see the amount of money that we can make together with AEW and New Japan, both here in Japan and in the United States and Canada and England and Australia and all around the world. So even though I beat Tanahashi tonight, I would be more than willing to wrestle him again anytime, and I would be more than willing to give him an AEW title shot. And Okada, and Naito, and Suzuki, and Ibushi, and Ospreay.
Okay.
Put aside all the hurt feelings.
So there's the comments that he made, and as you guys heard, hopefully the volume wasn't too low. I'll adjust on the podcast if it was, but yeah, I mean, he's saying even though he won, he's still willing to put the title up on the line against Tanahashi, and to work Naito, and to work Okada and Suzuki and so on. Ibushi, he mentioned. Yeah, he says as a businessman that he can see the money they can make together. That's the obvious point. And I think the reason I said that I think that AEW needs it is because they're in this situation where, whether they want to or not, they are competing with WWE. And so far, they're neck and neck with NXT. And they are doing better ratings probably than TNT expected. They're doing good in the demographic ratings and everything, but I do feel like this could bring some more excitement. Kyle, you mentioned the show was not good tonight, and there's so many dream matches they could put together, and it just kind of feels to me, and this is someone who, I am going to their next pay-per-view in Chicago at the end of February, and I like watching AEW, and I would actually prefer to watch AEW versus NXT because it is, to me, it's more fresh on Wednesday nights. But I do feel like the product, save last week where they I felt like they turned it around a little bit, has been languishing a little bit. And I just feel like this opens up so many doors and so many different matches they can do. And they don't have to do them all at once. And they could scatter them out over time and everything and just bring in a guy or two every few weeks. I can't help but feel like AEW needs it more. But
I'm glad you brought up the pay-per-view in Chicago because this is what I wanted to get to. And when I said I hadn't seen anyone bring this up. Let's say Jericho lost to Tanahashi, okay? Is the potential for a rematch then overshadowing your next pay-per-view if you're AEW? Because all people are going to be talking about is this relationship now. And AEW, with quarterly pay-per-views and, charging, $50, you can't afford to have people like looking by one of your pay-per-views. And I thought, when this whole deal was, I was a little disappointed too when Jericho lost, but I was like, oh man, if they do this deal, are people all of a sudden going to be looking past the pay-per-view in Chicago because they just want to see AEW versus New Japan? And that's not something you would want if you're AEW. Mm-hmm. So I did not see anyone bring that up, and I just thought it was something that was absolutely worth thinking about from the AEW perspective.
Well, I was hoping that match would happen in Chicago, personally.
Okay, well, I mean, I had just figured they had Jericho and Moxley on the books already, and that was kind of a lock, and I assume it still is, certainly after tonight.
Well, after tonight, for sure. But we didn't know for sure where they were going with the Moxley storyline. It would seem that he would turn it down and everything. But yeah, I guess selfishly I was hoping I was going to see Tanahashi and Jericho for the title in Chicago. Not to be. Yeah. But yeah.
Very selfish comment by you. By the way, I'm going to AEW in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Oh, nice.
As they come to the Wolstein Center, home of the Cleveland State Vikings.
Very nice. Are you got pretty good seats or?
They're okay.
They're okay.
They're okay. There's not a bad seat in that building. It's a pretty small building. So Cleveland State plays in the Horizon League. That's small. That's a little smaller than Missouri Valley. Mm-hmm. They're in the same conference as UIC, if that helps you out.
Yep,
Illinois, Chicago.
Yep. Well, I'll be looking for the Top Rope Nation shirt in the audience, Kyle.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm getting good. I'm getting in good shape too, quite frankly.
Nice. All right. Well, I think with that said, guys, let's take it to match of the week. Kyle, I know you got something on deck for us, so let's hear it.
Oh yeah, deep dive of the week. Let's talk about it. So, I don't know how much. I guess that's something we're going to talk about off air. I, love talking about the history of this great sport. Obviously, with the Royal Rumble coming up, I think it'd be a good idea if we maybe kind of talk some Royal Rumble memories on this telecast. Who knows if I can strong arm you boys into doing that, but. At some point before the Rumble, I'm, kind of like I did for Survivor Series, I'll be talking favorite matches. I'll come up with a list. One that did not crack the top 10, but is certainly in the spirit of the deep dive, in that it is a very good, underrated match from Royal Rumble in years past, would be Undertaker Rey Mysterio, world title match from 2010, a big man versus little man, babyface versus babyface match. That was very smartly worked. I encourage everyone to go out and watch that if they have not seen it.
Man, I faintly remember this match, but I definitely haven't seen it since it aired. Justin, any memories of this one?
I got nothing. I was out on wrestling at that time.
Yeah, that's one I'm gonna have to rewatch for sure too, because I don't remember it at all, but I know that Rey Mysterio. Oh, I remember it, but not very clearly. I know that Rey Mysterio is still working a pretty damn high level in 2019, though. So you go back and you watch him in 2010, and there's not much of a difference. This guy is ageless.
Yeah, that wasn't the reason too. Brought it up. The guy still had 10 years later, the guy's having great matches. So
yeah,
hats off to him.
Okay, very nice. Check it out, listeners. If you've got any comments on that, let us know. You can find us on Twitter at Top Rope Nation, topropenation@gmail.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as well, youtube.com/Top Rope Nation. So if you guys want to join us for the live cast next week, head on over to the YouTube page, subscribe, and we'll do another giveaway. And hopefully someone will actually get the trivia question right this week. I know some of you listening on the podcast were probably kicking yourselves because you knew the answer right away and you could have had that free t-shirt, but we will try it again next week. All right, so guys, with that said, I think that pretty much wraps it up here with episode 125. Any parting comments, any big plans for the weekend, Mr. Joint?
No, gonna finish up the greatest events of World War II in color on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I can appreciate that as a history teacher. Kyle?
I was going to say something about wars, and boy, would it have been. Never mind.
We'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah.
That'll be World War III in color. Greatest moments.
In 4K. All right, guys. Well, with that said, I'm Ryan Drosty here for Kyle Ross and Justin Joint. We'll check you guys out next week with episode 126. Take care.
Peace.